My family was poor growing up. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment as a family of 5. My older brothers would share the room next to us, and I slept with my parents. They had their bed, and I slept next to them in a very small kid-sized bed pressed up against the closet door. Basically, in order to get out of my bed, I would have to climb onto my parents' bed and get down from there. I was around 8 at the time, and I was getting ready to go to sleep. It wasn't extremely late since my parents were still awake tidying up the kitchen after dinner. I remember I had school the next day. The room was dark, but the light from the hallway was keeping me awake. So there I am, in bed, just sort of thinking when I blink. Suddenly, it's morning and there's light coming in from the window. It wasn't like I was awake and closed my eyes for a couple of seconds. No, I just blinked and boom, it was morning. I didn't want to believe it until I saw the cloudy sky outside, along with the morning fog on the window. My parents' bed looked like it had been slept in. My dad got up at the crack of dawn, so I figured he had already left for work. I ran out and called for my mom, only to find her in the kitchen. I asked if it was morning, to which she said yes, and told me to get ready for school. I tried asking her questions like, what exactly happened last night? What time did they go to bed? Did they see me asleep when they entered the room? But she dodged all my questions. I never got an exact answer. Unfortunately, my parents are older now, so their memories aren't as reliable, and I doubt they'd remember this happening. For the rest of the day, everything and everybody seemed the same, but I never forgot how, in less than a second, it went from night to morning. What's strange is this person describes it as being like just a normal blink. Like they weren't just about to fall asleep, they weren't dozing off or anything. Like it was just a normal blink and it went from night to day in seemingly a second. I don't know, is it possible that this person just like fell asleep and didn't even realize it? I really don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments. I've worn glasses for half of my life. I've had the same frame for years, since I was 9 years old. I'm 18 now. They were my grandfather's when he was in his 30s, and he just eventually outgrew them, but he had an obsession with keeping old things, so I claimed them as mine when he decided he no longer wanted them. I take care of the frames very well, and I'm gentle with them because they're made out of very thin metal, as most men's eyeglasses were in the 70s. Every time I shower, I always put my glasses in the same spot on the kitchen bar counter before entering the bathroom. I've put them there for the past decade, in the same exact spot each time. So, a few months ago, I did the same routine. Take glasses off, place them on the counter, shower, come outside. When I went up to the counter, I immediately put the glasses on, not taking a second glance at them because I'm pretty blind without them on. As soon as I put them on, I noticed something was off. They were heavier than usual. Like I said, the glasses I wear are made out of very thin metal, the classic 70s glasses, the typical glasses that are associated with serial killers. I immediately took them off to get a closer look, and I realized these were not my glasses. They were made out of a hard, thick plastic and had a brown and black tortoise pattern on them. They have a very modern frame and aren't even close to the frame I had, but they were my prescription. I was super confused because nobody else in my household wears glasses, and it would be impossible for these random glasses to just appear and replace mine. I know what my glasses feel like on my face and while I'm holding them. I know how much they weigh. I know everything about them from all the years I've had them. These plastic glasses are not my glasses. I turned the whole house upside down and didn't find them. I also asked every single family member that lives with me if they touched my glasses or saw them anywhere, and everybody denies it. I showed them the plastic frame and they claim that those are the glasses that I've always had. I went through old photos and there's literally 0 pictures of me with my grandfather's glasses on. They've been replaced by these chunky glasses in every single picture. I have no idea what's going on anymore. After reading all the Glitch in the Matrix stories, I'm starting to become paranoid. I can't get over the fact that there might be another me out there experiencing the same confusion, but that bitch has my glasses, and I want them back. Okay, the ending to that one was pretty funny, but to be honest, the ones that confuse me the most are the stories where people seem to have these strange experiences with objects that they're very familiar with. For instance, this guy has literally been wearing the same pair of glasses for a decade. You're telling me that 10 whole years went by where this guy wore these glasses every single day, and he never realized what they actually looked like? I don't know, this one is just very hard to explain. Alright, this next one is pretty strange, and I can't seem to find any sort of a rational explanation for it. To me, this one definitely sounds like it's coming from someone who truly believes in what they saw and experienced. So with that in mind, put yourself in this person's shoes, and let me know what you think. Not sure if it's classified as a glitch in the Matrix, but when I was 8, I had a conversation with my pop while playing PlayStation for a few minutes. Mom came in freaking out and crying and shook me. I suddenly forgot about the whole conversation like a second later, and Pop wasn't there. Mom was apparently listening from the other room for a minute and realized I was talking to Pop. Which was really bizarre because he died years before I was born and Mom had never told us anything about him. I remembered what his face looked like and described it to Mom perfectly. I really don't know how to feel about it because I didn't feel anything when it happened. Mom was shook for over a week and kept on asking me questions, but I couldn't remember anything other than his appearance and him standing watching me play PlayStation. This didn't happen to me, but to my dad. He works for a heating and air conditioning company, so he often has to go out to people's houses to fix things. About 5 years ago, he told me he had a bizarre dream where he went on a call to an elderly woman's house. He'd never seen the house or this woman before, but he said it was bizarre because of how realistic the whole thing felt. He fixed the boiler in the dream, chatted for a bit with her, and then left. About a week later, his company gets a call from an elderly woman needing her boiler fixed. They sent my dad on the job. When he arrived, he said it was the exact same house from his dream and the same old lady. He knew her name without needing to ask and knew his way around the house without having gone inside yet. When she opened the door, she said, "Hi, Gary," and when he asked how she already knew his name, she said she had a dream last week that her boiler broke and that my dad is the one who came to fix it, so she just knew what his name would be. Two complete strangers, never having met each other, had the exact same dream that they would meet each other, and they did. The whole thing is so crazy. The setting, mid-1990s, on a rural road in southern Mississippi. My best friend's dad had a used car dealership. He got in this small convertible sporty car, a Mazda Miata. He and I went on a thrill ride on the back roads of the Pine Belt. There was this one section that was relatively straight but had a hill crest halfway. We got behind a car probably going the speed limit, but it was too slow for us in that little Mazda. So he downshifted and went to pass. We got close to the crest when another car came over. We weren't 100 feet from the other car going ridiculously fast. We both yelled, "Oh shit," and I clenched my eyes shut and braced for impact. There is no way we could have missed that car. I remember seeing the driver's eyes. They were so close. Impact was inevitable. I opened my eyes, and my best friend had his arm resting on the door. He was singing to the radio. It was a beautiful day, the roof was down, songs playing, not a car in sight. It's one of the two things in my life I can't explain. I brought it up to him once a few years ago. We're both in our mid-40s now. He looked confused for a second, and then the blood drained from his face. "Holy shit," he said. "I remember that. What the hell happened?" I brought it up again a year or so ago, and he didn't remember anything. He didn't remember the incident. He didn't even remember me asking him about it. Truly remarkable. Alright, now I want you to keep that last story in mind while we go through this next one. Here's one from my brother. I don't think our mom believed him, but I certainly do. He seemed spooked when he got home. He was sitting in the passenger seat, driving home alongside my mom. A bright green car swerved and hit them, knocking bits and pieces of glass into his arm. He jolted awake afterwards, just in time to see the green car pass them. He claimed he felt the marks the glass left afterwards, too. Now, if you've seen some of my previous videos, you'll know that we've gone through some strangely very similar stories to these two. We've had several stories where people seem to get into a car accident. There's glass flying everywhere, plastic is flying, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're just right back to where they were a couple of minutes or seconds before. So, although that just sounds impossible, that doesn't sound like it makes any sense, why have so many different people reported the same exact thing? To be honest, in almost all of the replies to all of these different posts, people have had the same sort of explanation for this, and that is quantum immortality. Now, I'm not going to dive super into this idea or this theory, but I'm going to break it down for you a little bit. Basically, the idea is just that your consciousness never dies, that when you die in one reality or are about to die in that reality, your consciousness switches to another one where you didn't die in that same moment. Like, for example, if what we're talking about is true and that's what's happening here, that would mean that these people got into an accident, were about to die, and then their consciousness went to a different reality where they didn't die in that accident. Now, I'm not saying that I do actually believe in that, but it's impossible to disprove a lot of it at the same time, which makes it very interesting. I have a distinct memory of being in 3rd grade and checking out a Horrible Harry book from the school library. If I recall correctly, the library had a 1-week rental policy which lined up with my class's schedule of visiting the library once a week. A week passed and I grabbed the book from the side table to the left of my bed and brought it to school. I returned the book and got a new one. The next week, I was informed I couldn't check out a new book because my Horrible Harry book was late. That night, the book was once again on my side table. I put it in my backpack and returned it again the next day. Then it happened again. I returned the damn book 3 times, each time finding it in the same spot in my room. Still not sure what happened there. A few years ago, I started having weird dreams, very vivid. So realistic that I wrote them down and started telling family about them. I would get like 15 to 60 minutes out of each dream, and they were all different moments of the same event. One day, 2 months after having them, the event from these dreams started happening in real life, and I realized it and started predicting the future events based on my dreams. It got to the point where I would tell my friend, "This random person we've never met is going to show up soon, and she will say this and I will say this back, and she'll hang out with us for 5 minutes and then leave." And then 5 minutes later, this exact series of events happened, word for word. Afterwards, I found my dream notes, and they were spot on. I haven't really had dreams ever since, but I have very similar deja vu moments pretty much daily. I cannot explain. My brain is not the same ever since. I don't know why so many of the different stories I found for this video are about car accidents, but I just could not skip past this next one. Wait until you hear this. When I was 16, I had a dream. I was riding my bike down an unfamiliar road with library books. I had just checked them out from the library behind me, near the baseball stadium. There's a 4-way stop ahead of me, and my view of the road to the right is blocked by trees. As I approach the intersection, I don't really make much of an attempt to slow down. By the time I notice the olive green SUV, it's too late. The driver ran the red light, easily going double the limit. They slammed into me, pinballing me into a nearby pole, then into a fire hydrant. My bike is crumpled on top of me. There's no question that I didn't survive. And yet, the most absurd thing is that just before the accident, my vision stopped. Just before I crossed the road, as my body was flung away, I simply stood there like a neutral observer. It was like watching the instant replay death cam and just waiting to respawn. It was an odd dream to be sure, but one I wrote off as having an overactive imagination. After all, that scenario just wouldn't play out. I lived in the opposite direction, and it was far enough away that I'd simply drive instead. Good attempt, brain, but you won't fool me. I'm 19, attending community college locally. My family had errands to do in that part of town, and it wasn't anything I could really help with after half an hour. However, I'd recently taken to checking out CDs from the library to burn to my collection later, and since my bike was still in the van, I might as well bike the mile or two down to the library. I hadn't found anything worth listening to that I didn't already have, but I did find a few books to my liking. I rode my bike back home, the library behind me, the stadium further back. The only traffic was going the same direction, and there's no one else on the road. Not that I could really tell. There were trees blocking my view, and I couldn't really hear anything over the cars passing me. I came to that intersection, and a wave of terror just hit me full force. I slammed on the brakes at that stop sign. For a split second, I wondered what the hell I was doing. Then an olive green SUV, easily going 50 in a 25 zone, roared out past the trees. Thanks to the sudden stop, they barely avoided clipping my front tire. I damn near fell off my bike, shaking. I dragged it to the sidewalk, sitting on the grass, watching the cars go by, and just waiting for the adrenaline to calm down enough so that I could get back. 2 cars come to the stop sign. The first one passes the intersection. I saw my body crumpled by the fire hydrant. The second car passes in front of me. It's gone. I have quite a few weird or creepy stories from my childhood, but this one stuck out with me the most, especially because of my mother's reaction. My great-grandmother passed away when I was about 7. It was of old age and deterioration, so while it was sad, it was nothing surprising. The day of her funeral came, and in the country where I live, it's tradition to have all of the close family members of all ages stand close to the casket where the lid is lifted one last time so the family can look at their dead family member before the casket is nailed shut for good. Me and my cousins being young, our parents turned us away while the casket was open. But me being an insolent kid who likes to do the opposite of what they're told, I, of course, turned my head to look back anyway. Where I stood, I was close to the foot of the casket, but it was elevated enough that I could see my granny. I looked at her face, and she was looking up, just staring right up at the ceiling. Her blue eyes were open, and to this very day, I would swear it's true. It's what I saw. I wasn't scared or anything, I just found it odd. She looked like she was at peace. Eventually, of course, my mother caught me and turned me around once again. The rest of the ceremony and burial went on as normal. After the funeral was over and we were walking back to our car to go home, I still felt confused by what I had seen, so I turned to my mother and asked, "Mom, why were Granny's eyes open?" My mother just slowed down and looked at me with the most bewildered and horrified expression I've ever seen on her. They weren't. and she said nothing more, and did not speak to me for the rest of the trip home. I am 26 today, and I still think about it. Was it my imagination? Did I offend or scare my mom by asking? I may never know. I was at a very large zoo with my daughter, who was 5 at the time. We wore matching outfits so she could easily be identified if something were to happen. We were in the petting zoo petting goats together when I look over and see my daughter taking an older man's hand and walking away with him. I took off running. You never know your true abilities until you fear for you or your child's life. Only for my daughter and the man to be nowhere in sight. I had only run maybe 50 feet in a very open space. I was immediately crying and hyperventilating for fear that my daughter was gone, but suddenly, I felt a little hand grasp mine and my daughter's sweet voice asking me what happened. Everything was fine and we enjoyed our day at the zoo, but I can't seem to wrap my mind around the experience. The little girl had on the same shirt, same shorts, same shoes, same pigtails, and the same large birthmark on her neck as my daughter. Still gives me chills. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I have a feeling that this one, along with some of the other ones we've gone over in the past, are rooted in sort of a motherly instinct. And what I mean by that is I feel like the mother is so afraid and so almost paranoid of losing their child, which is just an innate feeling, that they almost hallucinate and almost see their kid being taken away by someone as almost like a fear response. Now, that's just my idea, but again, these stories are so weird and they don't make any sense. I mean, this mother saw her daughter walking away wearing the same exact clothes that she was wearing, which they were matching for that reason. She even saw the birthmark on the child as well. So although I want to jump to conclusions and try and explain this rationally, there's some things that just don't make any sense about this. I've never been much of a stranger to sleep paralysis, seeing as it's been happening to me since I was in middle school. I basically figured out how to make myself up from it, and I would never have those super scary sleep paralysis demons that people talk about all the time. It wasn't until about 2 years ago that I would start feeling something grabbing me while I was having these sleep paralysis episodes, or whatever they're called. I brushed it off since I've read that there are many people who can feel something grabbing them during sleep paralysis. It started to weird me out when it felt like I was being physically moved or turned while I was having sleep paralysis, and it was getting harder and harder to wake up from them each time. I tried to brush it off again and convince myself I was imagining things. There was one particular night where I was sleeping and realized that there was something grabbing me, which wasn't out of the ordinary at this point. The only difference this time is I could feel something speaking in my ear about how it wanted to kill me and how I would die soon. It wasn't like something that I heard in my head. I could feel its breath in my ears. The voice genuinely haunts me to this day. It was terrifying. Whatever it was tried to push my head into my pillow, and for a good second, I couldn't breathe. I somehow reached for my head, and I shit you not, grabbed a hand or a wrist that was holding my head down. After I grabbed the hand, it stopped and I woke up. Ever since that night, I haven't experienced any sleep paralysis episodes. This was about a half a year ago. I tried to tell my therapist about this to help me rationalize it, but even though it's normal to feel things grabbing you during sleep paralysis, there's not really any case where you can physically touch something that's not there during one of these episodes. The following story happened to me when I was 4 years old, and I have no recollection of it. I only know what my family has told me. When I was a kid, my dad worked in Mexico and would visit us about once a month. We lived in a small town in southern Texas. One day, before picking him up at the bus station, my mom told my siblings and I to use the bathroom at home so we wouldn't have to use them at the bus station. My brother and sister said they saw me walk into the bathroom, but they never saw me walk out. My mom opened the door to check on me, and I was gone. With the layout of our apartment, it would be impossible for me to walk out without anyone noticing. My mom started panicking and called my grandpa, who was a police officer at the time. Within an hour, multiple police officers and neighbors were searching for me at our apartment complex with no luck. 3 hours later, my godmother found me in my bedroom, sound asleep in my bed. The weird thing is that there were multiple people searching inside the apartment as well, and they hadn't found me anywhere inside. It gets weirder. When they asked me where I was, 4-year-old me said I was in the sky making clouds with a duck using a machine that had a crank that you would spin on one side and then clouds would come out the other. I didn't fully believe this story growing up until I was visiting my grandma in Mexico City years later, and she confirmed it, saying that my mom had called her crying right after it happened. My family likes to joke that I was abducted by aliens, then returned home after a few hours. This all happened 31 years ago, and I still have no memory of it at all. Alright, while searching for stories to share in this video, I came across like a gold mine of a subreddit. I'm honestly surprised that I haven't found this earlier, but it's called TheTruthIsHere, and it's basically just full of all these true stories of just people's unexplainable experiences. So basically just the premise of this entire channel. I'm gonna start off with one of the more popular posts in this subreddit, but just wait until you hear this. When my daughter was 4, she reminded me of our past life together. I've heard countless stories of this happening in one way or another with children, and wanted to see if it's happened to anyone here. When my daughter was around 4, she began to talk about the last time. She'd say things like, "Yeah, but that's what happened last time, not now. When I was older than you, not when you were my mom," when talking about things she remembered. One day, we were sitting on my bed having a random conversation before bedtime. She said something like, "But I was your grandma then. I died before you were born, so I wanted to meet you. When your sister died, I had to wait until you had a daughter." I was a twin, but my twin was a stillborn. My sister never took a breath. My daughter had no idea. There's no way she could have known that at 4 years old. Just putting it out there. There are countless stories of children remembering things from past lives. My kid did, for sure. Alright, this next one is one of those oddly beautiful stories. I mean, it's terrible what happened, but you'll see what I mean. This is the first time I'm actually writing about this. So when I was 13, my older brother, who was 18, and I were on our way to a movie when we were hit by a drunk driver. I woke up in a hospital 4 days later, having lost my right leg and other leg in cast, along with other injuries. That night, I woke up to my brother sitting by my bed, telling me everything will be okay and to go back to sleep. Next day, parents came to visit and see how I was doing. I asked why my brother wasn't with them, and they looked at each other but didn't say anything. That night, I again woke up to my brother sitting by my bed, again telling me he knows I can get through this, and that I need to be strong and overcome this, and not let my injuries stop me from living life. We talked a bit, him not answering specific questions, but answering more general questions. I remember asking him why he was still wearing the clothes from yesterday, because that was very unlike him to wear anything similar to what he wore the day before. He didn't answer, but when asked about how he was, he said better than he thought he would be, given the circumstances. He reminded me to be strong and keep living and not let anything stop me, and how much he loved me before telling me I should get some more sleep. The next day, my parents again came to visit me in the hospital, and I again asked why my brother wasn't with them, and they looked at each other. It was only after I said that I would like my family to visit together and not at different times, and would also like my brother to visit during the day when we can talk more instead of at night, that my dad asked what I meant. I told him Andy had been coming at night to visit. My mom broke down and left the room. My dad then told me that that was impossible because Andy died in the accident instantly. I didn't believe it, argued against it, and ended up having to be sedated. That night I had no visit, and the next day my parents brought a newspaper article about the accident. Okay, due to the nature of these videos, religion obviously pops up a lot. Now, I've said this before, but I personally feel kind of agnostic at the time being. I'm sort of in between, I guess. I don't think that it's possible to really prove religion, and at the same time, I don't think it's possible to disprove it either. With that being said, though, if something like this actually happened to me, I think I would probably start believing in something. I don't know, after you hear this one, I really want to hear your responses in the comments, and also just tell me if you're religious or not. I'm just interested to see what the type of people who watch my videos believe in, and whether or not that has an impact on the way you interpret these stories. I was homeless when I was in my early 20s. There was a weekend where I hadn't worked all week because my boss was gone for religious holidays. I didn't have much money, so I ran out before he got back. I didn't eat for 2 days, but on the morning of the 3rd day, I decided to pray. My prayer wasn't to a specific religious deity, rather I called out to the creator of all that is, was, and will be. I asked that I be fed or given a way to eat. I clearly heard the loudest whisper into my right ear. Clean the park. Clean the park across the street. Now, I was sitting on a bench across from a park, so I was taken aback by the words, but complied. I got the whole place picked up and noticed a piece of trash that I had missed. It wasn't trash, but a wallet. In it was a $10 bill, and it belonged to someone I knew. I used the money to get something to eat, and later in the day, I saw the person the wallet belonged to and returned it. I told them that I had used the money in it and would pay them back in 2 days when I worked again. They argued with me about money being in the wallet, claiming there was no money in it. They had taken it all out because they went to a rave and never kept cash in their wallet. I can't explain it, but I know that it happened. So I believe in the Father of all that is, was, and will be, and I can never not believe in that entity because it fed me when I was starving. On June 2nd, 2010, a taxi driver by the name of Derek Bird went on a killing spree. He killed a total of 12 people, including 13 others. I had met this man a number of times. Before these events, he seemed like a nice guy. He even gave me a deal when he picked me up for my friend's birthday the year before he snapped. The reason this relates to this subreddit I will get into shortly, but I've been thinking about posting this for a while now after getting into the idea of multiple realities or universes or whatever. It's piqued my interest. On the day of the shootings, I was supposed to meet my friends in Egremont. I went to the bus stop, and when it turned up, there were police on board, and the policeman refused to let me on. They filled me in on what was going on and said to stay clear of Egremont, as there was a madman shooting people at random. My friends were already in Egremont, so I decided to walk down instead. The bridge was cordoned off by police, and there were people staring from their windows. I approached the petrol station as someone came to unlock the door. I got screamed at by the people to get inside, so I did. I took my phone out to call my friends. They picked up quickly and asked if I was okay. They said they were in a store as someone had been shooting people in the street. We were stuck there for around 2 hours waiting on word of when it would be safe to leave the buildings. Eventually it came through on the radio that Bird had killed himself, and that was that. My father had a stroke in 2011 and was hospitalized for a while. My mother went to bring him some money and pajamas and stuck around for a bit. They were talking about how things were at home, and when she brought me up, my dad apparently broke down crying about, quote, what that bastard did to my son. My mother came home a bit distraught and filled us all in on what was said. In my dad's mind, I had been killed in 2010 by Derek Bird. He insisted I had died, and even when he got home over 2 months later, he became more agitated around me. Even violent, insisting I wasn't his son, that his son was murdered the previous year. It still freaks me out thinking about how he stared at me, how sure he was that I had died. He even went into detail about my funeral and everything. My father has recently been put into full-time care after an incident I won't get into here as it's personal. It makes me wonder even more about the possibility of multiple realities. I may be reading too much into it. He did have a stroke after all. What do you guys think about the situation? Now, this is a very, very interesting one to me because although I'm aware that the father had a stroke, is it really possible for somebody to come up with such a strong, powerful, false memory like that? The whole fake funeral and all the emotions that come with your child dying? Like, can you just make that up in your own head? I mean, he believed this so much to the point where when he came home, he was literally angry with his son. Like, he was visibly angry with him, denying that he was actually who he said he was. So again, I ask you, is it really possible that this father fabricated this entire memory of his own child's death? Or is there potentially something else going on here? Something far beyond our own understanding?